Hey guys, Eric with Midgard Arms. I'm going to do a continuation today of the best forgotten hunting calibers. Left off quite a bit on the last list that a lot of people made sure to tell me about. 300 H&H was a great one. A lot of people sent that one in. It is an awesome cartridge. It was developed. Holland had a huge run on cartridges across that whole early 1900s time period. And I didn't mention that one. It just kind of escaped my mind, but yeah, that was one of the big ones. So this one here, I'm going to do a over 30 cal best forgotten hunting cartridges, because I kind of stopped at like the 308 Norma and that on the last video. So first one I'm going to mention is going to be the 8mm Mauser. A few people mentioned that to me on comments and stuff, and yes, the 8mm Mauser is a huge piece of history, and it's still a piece of European history right now. It's one of the most popular hunting cartridges in Europe as we speak. It was adopted by the German Empire in 1903. At the time, in its height of popularity during the World War I, World War II, it was probably one of the most popular cartridges across the world. A lot of the Ottoman Empire, they all adopted that 8mm cartridge. Romania, I mean, pretty much everywhere. RWS and stuff makes them, and they're out of, I think, Romania or one of them Serbian countries, Serbia, something like that. And they do all 8mm Mauser stuff. Zastava, same thing. Very, very popular. Parent case was the Patron 88. The ammunition 88 essentially was a round-nosed, 186 grain, if I remember correctly, projectile. And then once they adopted it to the Mauser 98 action, they became the Spitzer bullet, to get better ballistics out there, and kind of gave birth to that 8mm cartridge. And I'm going to lump into this one the 8mm .6 as well. So right after World War II, with the surplus of 8mm rifles coming in, but not a lot of the ammunition. A lot of people were taking that surplus of 30-06 cases and rechambering their 8mm Mausers to that 30-06 case and making their 8mm .6. So I mean, there's a ton of those old hunting rifles that you'll see out there. 8mm .6, 8mm Mauser, sporterized Mauser. You catch them all the time in pawn shops and everything else. Just you can tell they were somebody's truck gun. I mean, they're that popular. 180 grain bullets, and these are all coming from RWS's ammunition's website. The 8mm Mauser pushes those 181 grain bullets at 2,700 feet per second, going with 29 foot-pounds of energy. Pretty damn impressive for such a old cartridge. Pretty damn impressive. And it goes up to 198 grain. Going 2,600 feet a second with 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. Yeah, that'll take down everything. A black bear, a grizzly bear. I mean, throw one of those things on an open sites and you're hunting thick timber like they do in Germany and stuff for hogs and whatnot. I mean, that's why it's one of the most popular hunting cartridges in Europe at this point. And for the 8mm .6, just to kind of throw it in there as a comparison to the 8mm Mauser, looking up in my Nosler book, the load data shows pretty much the same thing. You're shooting 180 grain ballistic tip, Nosler ballistic tip at 2,700 feet a second. So, I mean, you're still getting that 2,900 foot-pounds of energy, just like an 8mm Mauser. So, I mean, those two I kind of clump up into one because the popularity of the 8mm Mauser now across the world, and post-World War II, when you couldn't find the ammunition, everybody was chambering it to that 8mm .6. Still great cartridges. Grab those things up. Another one, most people should know about this. This was another one designed by Paul Mauser, and it was designed for the 1889 Mauser. It was the predecessor to the Model 98. Is the 765 Argentine. People know it around the world as the 765 Argentine or the 765 by 53. In Europe, it's duly noted as the 765 by 53 Belgian. It was another Paul Mauser design. America had John Moses Browning. Europe had Paul Mauser. I mean, those two were kind of battling out in that whole time frame, creating cartridges, creating guns. I mean, two amazing, smart people. The 765 Argentine was one of the first generations for smokeless powder. They used cordite and that stuff, and it was one of the first rimless cartridges. So, I mean, very good step in history. It's definitely an honorable mention. If it shouldn't be on this list, it is definitely an honorable mention because it just shows the step progression from these rimmed cartridges that we were shooting before and black powder to these new smokeless propellants. And, a rimmed cartridge, making things a little bit more easy to cycle in your automatics and everything else like that. Great cartridge. 155 grain, going about 2,710 feet per second, putting out about 2,500 foot-pounds of energy. Pretty damn good. I mean, you can definitely take a elk with that, moose with that. I mean, muzzle energy is 2,500. It's a great North American caliber. And you can shoot up to the 211 grain, going 2130 feet per second with 2,000 foot-pounds energy as well. So I mean, it's still, I mean, you can get up there for shooting close-range bears out of trees. If you had the old 1889 Mauser, and you just had it in your truck gun and you ran a line up a tree or a black bear or something like that in Idaho, I mean, no problem, take that son of a bitch out. And ballistically, it's comparable to the 303 British. One of the most popular things, because it never really took off in the States, and for the 7.65 Argentine, you can take your surplus of 30-06 brass, resize it to the Argentine, and use 303 British load data, and you got yourself a shooting rifle. Next one, few people mentioned this one on my comments and stuff, was a 375 H&H. It came out in conjunction with the 275 H&H in 1912. Holland & Holland is a gun manufacturer, gun company in Britain. They came out with these line of cartridges, and it was the belted Magnum. This is like the start of the belted Magnum, because the taper on the H&H cartridges is very shallow, and there's not much of a shoulder on these things. They needed something to set headspace reliably, so you didn't blow up in your gun, you didn't have any issues like that. So they used that belt around the bottom to set the headspace, and continued today. I mean, the 375 H&H is the parent cartridge to almost every Weatherby cartridge. All your rim mags, your win mags, your mag mags, your anything that's a belted Magnum nowadays came from this cartridge. I mean, it's that popular the world over. Probably more popular as a parent cartridge than it was as a, you know, especially North American big game cartridge. But it's still referred to as the queen of the medium bores by Jack O'Connor, and considered the best all-around African caliber for most of your plains game up to your dangerous game stuff. You know, there's better choices if you're going strictly after elephants and stuff. And you know, my last video, the 7mm Mauser was knocking down thousands of elephants. This thing ain't gonna have an issue doing it either. I mean, there's better ones out there, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. Moving on up to the 303 British, you know, is kind of the same as that 7.65 Argentine, like I was saying. Originally designed as the black powder cartridge in 1888. Okay, it's that old, and it served as a standard English service caliber from 1889 to 1950. I mean, huge long freaking range. And I mean, if you look at the expanse of the different Lee Enfields and everything else, all the different generations that it went through, the number 1 Mark III up to the number 4 Mark I, the jungle carbines, everything else. I mean, you can tell the Brits just absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved the cartridge. And in all honesty, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, it was replaced in the 1950s by the 7.62 NATO. When they became the NATO country, everybody all adopted that 7.62 308, and it just kind of went to the wayside. They had use for it because it was still serving the damn country for almost 100 years. And then just to keep everything in NATO, strictly NATO, switch to 9mm, switch to 308, switch to 223. That's what it is. I'm sure if they were still their own country, they'd probably be still using the 303. 150 grain bullets going about 2770, producing 2550 foot-pounds of energy. Again, anything in North America you can take with that thing. I hunted with one for a couple years when I lived in California, and I mean, it was a number 1 Mark III, made 1917. Still, at that point, was almost 100 years old. It still can shoot targets easy at 300 yards open sights with that thing. Super accurate guns. And then with 174 grain match bullets, going 2,500 feet a second, you got about 2,400 foot-pounds energy on that guy. And then the 180 grain soft points, going out 2,570 feet a second, you get about 2,600 foot-pounds energy. Again, I mean, if you want something, if you love the old rifles, if you love having, you know, any of that nostalgic stuff, and you still want to take that stuff hunting 303 British, you can find yourself a beautiful sporterized one, or even a beautiful original one. Take that guy out, and I mean, it'll take anything you need with it. Still super popular in Australia, in Canada, and New Zealand as one of their standard hunting cartridges, considered as an adequate for all Canadian game, is what the Canadians always said. The Boers, after the Boer War, the Great Boer War, they took a lot of the captured Enfields And they took everything from Impala up to Eland and Kudu. I mean, just telling you, I mean, you go take that thing to Texas to go shoot a Nil guy or something like that, 303 British has probably already done it. You probably already got a slot in history for that. And still used by, or it was used by the Canadian Rangers for polar bear protection all the way up till 2015, when they finally switched over to the whole NATO stuff too, and said, you know what, we're going to just stick with 308 because we got a surplus of it in the military, you know. So very long expanse if you want to talk about that, from 1889 up to 2015 when it was finally taken out of the Canadian Rangers. Pretty damn sweet. And next one, it's still pretty popular today, but I think a lot of people forget about it or overlook it or don't put two senses into it, is the 338 Federal. It's based on the 308 cartridge, made designed in 2006 by Federal in conjunction with Seiko Rifle Company. They came out with this guy, just up neck 308 to 338 caliber. You got yourself 338 Federal. You can use your surplus 308 brass to size it. And I mean, it's a caliber there that if you wanted something, especially in an AR platform, because a lot of companies are making that 338 Federal in an AR platform. If you want to use that, you know, I don't like using the AR for Western hunting if you're packing in, because they're heavy. But if you're sitting in a tree stand and you're shooting anything from hogs to whitetails, to even if you got some bears or something like that you're just kind of baiting on or whatever like that, and you want to use your AR platform, that 338 Federal is going to be great. I mean, you can go 180 grain bullet, going 28, 30 feet a second, over 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. So, I mean, you've got all you need. If you're a stand hunter, if you're one of those guys that sits in blind or anything like that, or I mean, even if you built yourself a lightweight bolt-action rifle in 338 Federal, you'll be great. I mean, out to 500 yards, you're still going to be dropping elk and everything. Without problem. I mean, your foot pounds, because it's such a heavy bullet, is still going to be up there to get enough energy going through to take anything you want. 210 grain bullets going 2,630 feet a second puts out 3,225 foot-pounds of energy. So same thing, just a little bit over 3,200 foot-pounds of energy. And the Federal and Seiko came together to make that 338 Federal in order to produce a super hard-hitting, light recoiling round. And you know, you have your 338 Win Mag, you have your 338-06, all these other ones that, you know, use a lot of propellant, a lot of slow propellants, and they hurt your shoulder. Like I said, 338 Federal never really has caught on, but it's still a good following behind it, because, you know, there is more stuff out there for heavier stuff, you know, if you want to shoot 338 Win Mag, like I said. But it keeps you in that AR platform, that short action platform, and it still gives you good oomph. You know, it's, in my opinion, if I had a choice between like a 325 short mag or a 338 Federal, I'd go for the 338 Federal. It's easier to get the brass because you can just reload your 308 brass. It's just an overall more user-friendly, or if you're not totally into guns and reloading for obscure shit or anything like that, and you just want one kind of gun to do them all, the 338 Federal will be that. So those are my above 30 cal calibers for, and I'm trying to keep it more towards a, you know, deer, elk, and bear stuff. There is several out there, like, I mean, I've shot the 405 or 505 Gibbs. The new 350 Legend is supposed to be pretty good. I mean, there's quite a bit out there, so please tell me anything that I forgot on those. And then, kind of like last time, I want to talk about a couple of things that I don't really get. Okay, so the fad with this 6.5 stuff is still going on, but there is one thing that I absolutely love that Weatherby just came out with. I picked one up myself, and I am so excited to try this thing out. It's the 6.5 Weatherby RPM. And it is based on the 284 Winchester, or more specifically, the 6.5 284 Winchester. And they took it, which is a small action, a short action, and lengthened it out to a 30-06. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, you got the 264 Win Mag already. You know, Eric, you already brought that up in your last video. 264 Win Mag's already been done. Everything's already been done before. What makes this one different? So when you're looking up load data and case capacity and stuff like that, your 264 Win Mag is 78.8, I think, grains of H2O, you know, however they measure it, you know, 70 max grain capacity is 78.8. The 6.5 Weatherby RPM is 82, and it's got it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. And when you look at the load data and you're seeing powders in this cartridge that are 50 BMG, US 869, H1000, you know, probably super slow burning powders just to fill up that case capacity. The velocity coming out this, which, you know, velocity isn't always everything, but the velocity coming out of these has the potential to just truly make these new bullets that we're getting just outrageous. I mean, I'm super excited for the 6.5 Weatherby RPM, and I can't wait to take something with it and just to see its performance. I know stacking my Browning 264 Win Mag up against my Weatherby, I mean, they're like neck and neck. I mean, when you throwing them up with the ballistics, with the what is that thing called? When you're shooting it through to see how fast you're going, they're not much different. The Weatherby is a little bit faster out of the box. It says that for the ammunition, factory ammunition, is about 3,000 feet a second, and I'm getting just over 3,000 feet a second, 3,010 feet a second. My 264 Win Mag shooting a little bit better. You know, burgers that I've got some hand loads for. You can't find nothing to reload anything anymore right this minute, but it's neck and neck. I cannot wait to start load developing for that Weatherby RPM, because guess what? On a sub 7 pound rifle, it's freaking phenomenal. With the AccuBrake on it, the recoil is very manageable, super freaking accurate. I cannot wait to take it out there. And new one that I do not understand. You know, I gave 6.5 Creedmoor a ration of shit, and you know, some people liked it, some people hated it. But another one, the new one I don't understand is the Winchester 6.8 Western. I understand that they're trying to get onto this kind of like a 300 PRC, where they're creating a new long range hunting cartridge. But the 270 short mag is essentially the same thing. I mean, 6.8 and 270 are the same thing. So you have a 6.8 Western, a little bit more case capacity, I believe, than the 270 short mag. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, we put a little bit faster twist barrel on it. We did this. You know, Winchester could have easily, on that particular one, just put a new faster twist on the 270 short mag and done that. I think they're whipping a dead horse trying to stick up with those short mags right now. And so that's my gun gripe of the day on that one. It is the 6.8 Western. I'm interested to see where it goes. I don't think it's going to get very popular. I don't think it's going to be a lot like a lot of those short mags and those Ruger compact mags and stuff. It's going to have a little niche following, but then it's going to kind of fall off. So if I missed anything, let me know. If you guys put any more comments in there, tell me what the fuck you guys like. I'll tell you what I think about it. And there's quite a bit of shit that I don't know, and quite a bit of shit that I need you guys to tell me too. So let me know. I'm going to try to bring a video up for my 300 PRC. Got one of those, and my 6.5 Weatherby RPM, because those two cartridges right there, I think, are the next wave of quality hunting cartridges that's going to expand what we do now as hunters. All right, guys. See ya.